Welcome back, folks. What is your view on socialism? Because we're not actually going to discuss socialism, but we are going to take a look at an article posted to World Socialist website by a man by the name of Tom Peters. And it's titled as follows. This is why I took issue with it. It is titled, Far-Right Smear Campaign Continues Against New Zealand Green MP. I'll tell you what, calling New Zealand first far-right is something special. This is already off the bat proving why socialists in this country, in this world, are nut jobs. Honestly, if you're calling NZ first far right, you cease to have any credibility at all. New Zealand's Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters, leader of the right-wing nationalist NZ First Party, is continuing to support a fascistic smear campaign against Green Party MP Benjamin Doyle. Fascistic. For it to be fascistic would have to be trying to shut down his ability to speak based on nothing, based on the idea that we don't want him to speak and share these political opinions we don't like. That's got absolutely nothing to do with what's happening here. What is happening here is that we actually wanted him to speak. We wanted him to come out and say, this is what is true, this is what is not true, about some very, very concerning social media posts. We just wanted answers about social media posts and absolutely nothing to do with his political views. Now, whilst his political views may be abhorrent, I'm certainly not going to demand that he does not have them, that he does not share them. I'm just going to demand that we are able to criticize them without being gaslit, without being called far-right or fascist. You catch my drift. Doyle spoke to the media on April 9 for the first time following a fortnight of vile and baseless slanders from Peters and numerous far-right commentators who implied that Peters had demanded that the Greens answer serious questions about Doyle and called for the police to investigate MP. My question is, what are these vile and baseless slanders? Because with the exception of this, which some people, mostly anonymous people, threw around, there was nothing vile, there was nothing baseless about anything. There were a bunch of screenshots from a social media account, and that was delivered, that was provided. And that was provided in full with people trying to add context to some of the meanings of some of the words and captions and symbolism used. That's neither vile nor baseless, it's rather the opposite. The only evidence produced by NZ First and its supporters are unremarkable family photographs shared by Doyle on Instagram, including some that included child alongside inappropriate language. Right, so now the article writer is proving that they're not vile or baseless, that there is quite literally evidence, but they are dismissing it as being unremarkable family photography that may or may not have been alongside inappropriate language. Let's be real. Unremarkable family photographs are never captioned with inappropriate language. Unless, contextually, it makes sense. Contextually, it did not make sense here until Ben tried to give us an explanation for what bussy actually means. Whether you want to accept that is up to you. I don't really care. The hysterical campaign focused on the fact that Doyle, who identifies as non-binary and uses they-them pronouns, had named their Instagram account Bible About Bussy and labelled one set of photos with the words bussy galore. For several days, New Zealand's media was dominated by discussion of the meaning of the word bussy, a lewd slang term which Doyle had foolishly adopted as a social media nickname. The demonisation of Doyle is part of the National Party-led government's efforts to stoke divisions based on race, gender, and sexuality, and to divert public attention from its historic assault on workers' living standards and preparations for war. This includes plans announced on April 7 to double the country's military spending, which will be paid for with even deeper cuts to healthcare and other vital services. Here's the thing. Defence spending is a vital area that we need to fund, and it's been greatly underfunded for far too long. 2% of GDP by 2030 something is piss all. We need to have that at 4% realistically. Especially with the state of the world right now, especially with the uprising of socialist nutcases who are inherent warmongers, who believe in dividing people based on, what was it? Race, gender, and sexuality, and then gaslighting everyone into thinking it's the other side doing that. They're the ones that are going to create all the conflict which would require a defence force that is actually capable of functioning. Doyle told the media that he had faced a barrage of abuse and vitriol, including a significant number of threats to my life and the safety of my child and family. The MP said their social media posts had been taken wildly out of context and manipulated in a campaign driven by homophobic and transphobic lies and conspiracy theories. All this is gaslighting. None of it is true. Asked to respond specifically to Peter's statements, Doyle did not condemn the Deputy Prime Minister. He said he would rather have a face-to-face restorative conversation, which is also the Green Party's approach to criminal justice, restorative conversations, rather than actually anything remotely resembling justice. Because I believe that we can't resolve anything through bickering or in the media. Peters rejected the offer, telling Radio NZ, "No, I'm sorry, Doyle can speak directly to the police." Peters rejected the offer, telling Radio New Zealand, "No, I'm sorry, Doyle can speak directly to the police. Those are the people he needs to speak to, not me." Peters claimed he was not attacking the LGBT community, writing on Facebook, "The posts were problematic for their content, not because of what Doyle identifies as or what sexuality he might be." This is a fact. This is contradicted, however, according to the socialist website. This is contradicted by the facts. The Post reported on April 9 that the campaign against Doyle was started by businessman Rhys Williams, a former member of New Zealand First, using an anonymous X account. Williams distributed screenshots from Doyle's Instagram account, which were then seized upon by Christian and anti-transgender activists and by Peters. Oh, okay, so Peters making the claim that the posts, or the whole reason why he reposted the stuff was because they were problematic for their content and not because of what Doyle identifies as. That's debunked by the fact that someone who is not Winston Peters, someone who was formerly associated with Winston Peters' party, is the one that broke the story. Oh, okay. So guilt by association. So any single time an anti-Semite, anytime an anti-Semite is the source for an article about Israel, I can disregard it because it's an anti-Semite. Is that it? Any single time that a trans rights activist writes a hit piece on a conservative Christian, I can disregard it because, well, a trans rights activist said it. In fact, to make it a more realistic and comparable example, let's say a trans rights activist reveals a deep, dark, hidden secret about a Christian leader. And then some moderate in the Labour Party decides, moderate in the Labour Party, that's a good joke, moderate in the Labour Party takes that breaking story, shares it. I can disregard any of the evidence and disregard the credibility of that Labour Party MP sharing the information because its source was an inherently biased trans rights activist. Is that it? Great one. But it kind of makes sense that this would be the standard that socialists set, right? Because socialists just avoid anything bad in relation to them whilst demonizing everything related to the other side and don't hold the same standards, right? You know, that conservative person's bad because they cited a conservative person who's even more bad. However, we can cite Marx, we can cite, communist Russia, we can cite all of this stuff, and it's not bad at all. Like nationalism is supposed to be viewed as evil because once upon a time there was such a thing called National Socialism, which murdered millions of people. But that same standard isn't supposed to be applied to Marxist communist socialists when they are citing or discussing things or holding views that are directly or indirectly related to Marx, Lenin, Mao, Guevara, Stalin, National Socialism. No? Not the same standard? Doyle became a target for these layers after advocating greater access to medical procedures for transgender people, otherwise known as self-mutilation. NZ First copying Donald Trump and other far-right movements. Are you trying to suggest that Donald Trump's movement is a far-right movement? Good one. Internationally, has campaigned vigorously against transgender rights. At NZ First's insistence, the government has removed sex and gender education guidelines from schools. No, they're just amending them to avoid gender ideology and other such nonsense. In an interview with the right-wing platform podcast on April 4, Williams described himself as a concerned New Zealander. In fact, Williams was the main organizer of a major anti-transgender conference in Wellington last year, which featured speakers from NZ First, the Evangelical Destiny Church, and the far-right Christian lobby group Family First. Far-right! Honestly, I would be shocked. I would be shocked if Family First, on average, was more far-right than me. And I am a moderate. Conservative, but also libertarian in many respects. The far-right in New Zealand is so non-existent that you wouldn't be able to name them. These people. On his X account, which has more than 9,600 followers, Williams frequently glorifies NZ First while posting hundreds of comments demonising LGBT people. His deranged statements include rainbow equals, simple as that, and trans activists are either or mass murderers. Williams also repeats conspiracy theories about the state-funded charities Inside Out and Burnett Foundation, which promote sexual health and education, smearing them as part of a rainbow cult that is grooming children. What are the conspiracy theories exactly? Like that'd be great to know. What are the conspiracy theories about Inside Out and the Burnout Foundation that Tui Teka shares? Williams shares. Because all I see is Williams, among many others, and myself included, sharing factual information about what Inside Out believes in, what they do, and not much else. Just because people are exposing Inside Out and the Burnett Foundation for what they are, that doesn't mean it's a conspiracy. But that's all you've got, isn't it? Because that's all the left ever has. They've got, they're exposing us for being the ridiculous people that we are. They're exposing us for holding these abhorrent and, quite frankly, unpalatable views. That must all be conspiracy. We can't allow the general public to know that we are writing articles about scat play. Burnett Foundation. Thank you very much. I don't recommend searching that up on Google if you don't know what it is. Just save your own brain cells. NZ First President Julian Paul told the Post that Peters had not coordinated or planned anything with Williams. We became aware of the Doyle issue just like everyone else, reading the plethora of posts on social media platforms. This is not credible. Williams' X account is followed by several senior NZ First figures, including Paul, Party Secretary Holly Howard, Board Member Helma Vermeulen, and MPs Shane Jones, Jenny Marcroft, and Tanya Unkovic, according to the Post. Here's the thing. They're trying to claim that it's impossible that NZ First didn't coordinate with Williams because members of NZ First follow him. Members of the National Party follow me. That doesn't mean I'm coordinating with them any single time they say something that I agree with, or they say anything that I've posted and then they've caught on to. You know, I would argue that there are far more people in the National Party who follow me than there are NZ First. And I don't even like the National Party. So that says all you need to know. You know, I purport inherently nationalist views, and yet the globalists in the National Party follow me. Interesting. Following someone on social media doesn't mean that you agree with them. Following someone on social media doesn't mean that you are cooperating with them to smear politicians or whatever. I follow members of the Green Party until they block me. I follow members of the Māori Party until they block me. I follow members of the Labour Party until they block me. You know, that doesn't mean that I like them. That doesn't mean that I'm coordinating with them for certain things. It just means that I'm interested in what they have to say. Or I like to have a look at what other people are saying about a range of different things. Because as much as they want to gaslight about this whole Doyle thing and pretend it's a non-issue and it's just a big beat-up by a bunch of far-right fascists, had these New Zealand First members not been following Tui Teka, they may not have been able to raise concerns about this issue as they did. In fact, if it wasn't for them doing so, the media may not have ever commented on this issue at all. Because it wasn't until Winston Peters went on the platform and had a discussion about this exact issue that the rest of the mainstream media actually made articles about it. So for me, what this shows is that a political party is interested in what people on the internet have to say, what New Zealanders have to say, the very many issues from individual independent journalists and the like, be them anonymous or otherwise, doesn't matter. Because that's what this is. They are beating up on independent journalism. Which, funny enough, is very much in the socialist playbook, isn't it? Independent journalism is a no-no in a socialist society. but I'll leave it there. I think we get the point. Nationalists are bad. People who hold opinions they don't like are far-right fascists. People who dare question very inappropriate material online are, again, far-right fascists. We don't have to hold ourselves accountable. We don't have to hold ourselves to the same standard. We just have to continuously gaslight, deflect, and accuse the other side of being worse than us. If we can do that long enough, maybe, just maybe, our socialist utopia will come into fruition.